Let me ask you a question. What is the #1 cause of paedophilia? That's right. Sexy children. Back in the 90s, South Wales was going through somewhat of a renaissance in the alternative music scene, producing some massive acts including the Manic Street Preachers, Stereophonics and Feeder. So, a plucky gang of teens, Ian Watkins, Lee Gaze and Mike Lewis in their sleepy town of Pontypridd, did what all us weird kids did back in the day. They made a band. After the trio formed the act Aftermath in 1991, Watkins went on to create Public Disturbance with Lewis and Fleshbind with Gaze. Not quite satisfied with what these bands were doing, the trio reformed, joined by drummer Mike Chiplin in 1997 to become Lostprophets, originally spelt like this. Because yes, the 90s were just that rad. With the addition of bassist Stuart Richardson and DJ Stepzak, they signed with independent label Visible Noise, releasing their first album, The Fake Sound of Progress, in late 2000. DJ Stepzak was replaced in that same year by Jamie Oliver. They went on the road supporting bands like Linkin Park and Pitchshifter, and after some intense touring of the festival circuit, broke into the American market with their sophomore release Start Something in 2004, selling over 2.5 million copies worldwide. While Lostprophets' follow-up album, Liberation Transmission, reached #1 in the UK, they would never achieve the same level of global success that they had with Start Something. Even so, the band continued to build a following, headlining the final day of Download Festival in 2008. And for any of y'all stateside who don't know, this is the biggest metal festival in Great Britain, with 80,000 plus in attendance every single day, having been headlined by bands such as Metallica, Linkin Park, Slipknot, Maiden, System and Sabbath, just to name a few. So yeah, this was a big deal. Around 2009, Watkins fell into severe drug addiction, which began to affect his job as a frontman, which, in 2012, culminated in one particularly embarrassing performance in Cardiff. After this UK tour, the band gave him an ultimatum, that he'd get clean or they were going to kick him out of the band because, yeah, his drug use was starting to get a little bit dark.
Just to kind of give you an idea of his mental state around this tour, some of the dates he would show up on stage wearing a parka and sunglasses, would sit on the floor, put the microphone down on the stage, and just sit there for the entire show while the band are all just standing there just like, what do we do?
With an audience there?
Selling tickets to a show. This was their show.
Now, between the end of this tour in May and their joining of the Warped Tour in mid-July, Watkins apparently did get sober, performing and singing better than he had in quite some time. But of course, it all went tits up. On July 28, 2012, after their show in West Palm Beach, Florida, Watkins wandered off with some random chick to do a ton of drugs. The next day, the band, realizing that their singer was nowhere to be found, requested to be put on at a later time slot of 5 p.m. Watkins unfortunately had managed to drive in the exact opposite direction of their St. Petersburg show. The band ended up having to do the whole gig with Oliver on lead vocals. After the show, bass player Stuart Richardson walked onto their tour bus to find Watkins had returned. The drugged-up twatbag proceeded to be more than a little lippy, so Richardson, in a blind rage, proceeded to beat the shit out of him, ending his melee by slamming a can of Monster in the singer's face. Later that year, Watkins' home was raided on suspicion of storage and distribution of drugs, where police found 27 terabytes of child pornography, along with a 17-minute-long video of Watkins attempting to orally and anally rape an 11-month-old baby. Let that sink in for a minute. It was revealed that the reason Watkins had had access to the child in question was because he was conspiring with the kid's mother along with another woman who had a 1-year-old girl who he was planning to rape, get hooked on drugs, and apparently whore out to older men. You know, for the most part, I don't adhere to the idea that people are inherently bad, just that they do bad things. However, Watkins crosses over to the realms of comic book supervillain with these levels of evil. When they got into his computer, you know what his password was? I fuck kids. Oh, also, here's a picture from 2012 of Watkins seeing children dressed as Santa Claus. I became a fan of Lostprophets several years after I found out that Ian Watkins was a paedophile. So, yeah, I reckon you've got some questions. How did this happen? I, like a lot of millennials, have never had anything you'd call a proper career, just a sort of meandering life of false starts and disappointments. Now, while I may have given you the impression in my last video that Tokyo was the worst place I've ever lived, and yeah, it was a fucking toilet, that title actually goes to the quaint little city in the southwest of England called Bath. Bath is the kind of place that is probably great to retire in, somewhere to lay back and relax in your nice apartment with your car and your money and your Italian wife and your French bulldog. But my life consisted of working the 5 a.m. shift in the warehouse of the UK's largest sex toy company, Lovehoney, living on the edge of town with a wife beater who once started slamming something against the wall upstairs at 2 a.m, and I still remember walking up the stairs shaking like a fucking leaf as I tried to intervene, not knowing what the fuck to do after knocking on their door and no one answered. Christmas Day, I remember walking into the kitchen to put on my dinner, and I saw all of these pots filled with nondescript Eastern European slop that was also slathered all over the kitchen counter and floor. I'd had a severe mental breakdown just a few days before this, and my sense of reality was rather frayed. Wherever that Polish drunken wife-beater was, I remember hoping that he would come home and try to fight me, because in that moment, I so badly wanted an excuse to beat him into a bloody pulp. This was rock bottom. So yeah, at these kind of junctures in life, you tend to regress to the comfort of childhood, which for me, of course, was nu metal. It had actually been a few years since I'd sat down and explored the treasure trove of music that had made my childhood amazing. However, there was a problem. I quickly exhausted my reserve of nu metal goodness, and this being 2018, the nu metal revival had not yet happened. I realised that if I wanted more of that sweet, crunchy goodness, I would have to dig through the garbage pile of discarded tat that I thought I was too good for in my teenage years. One of these bands happened to be Lostprophets because they were gay, as my 14-year-old self would have put it. Really, really gay. Sometime around the LimeWire days of the interwebs, maybe like 2006, I came across the song Burn Burn, and even though that was a much-loved song of my early adulthood, around 2012 when the news broke about Watkins, I remember thinking it was weird for me to be enjoying that song because of what I now knew. And I faced that same feeling in 2018, browsing YouTube one lonely night, staring at the thumbnail for Shinobi vs. Dragon Ninja. God damn it, that is such a fucking stupid name. But when you're in the depths of the darkest moments of your life, craving some relief, you stop caring. You just click. And holy shit, that song fucking slapped. I needed more. I fell back in love with Burn Burn. My skin tingled the first time I heard We Still Kill the Old Way. I remember walking to work in the dark at 4:30 in the morning, blasting to Hell We Ride on my iPod, and my heart melting at how fucking smooth that guitar line is during the chorus. Okay, seriously, just shut the fuck up for a second and listen to this. That guitar riff is fucking filthy. During the darkest period of my life, a time where my sole wish was to be dead, Lostprophets provided me with a lot of comfort. But how do you do it? How do you separate someone so awful from such wonderful music? I honestly don't know. After Arch Enemy started harassing that photographer, I wasn't even able to look at Angela Gosso or What's-Her-Face afterwards, being physically disgusted whenever I saw them. Yet, I am still able to enjoy Ian Watkins' nancy little melodies, which I know makes no fucking sense. I did often wonder, was I able to separate the guy from the music because it was in fact just a guy. 1/6 of a whole unit, in fact. I mean, if all 6 members of the band had been kitty diddlers, yeah, I'd say that probably would have been a considerably bigger challenge for me. But then, one day, enjoying Lostprophets music suddenly became so much easier. On October 11th, 2025, Ian Watkins was murdered by a fellow inmate from a stab wound to the neck, and the world rejoiced. But I didn't. No matter how evil someone is, and this is not a judgment on any of y'all, I just can't celebrate the taking of another person's life. I can't. The thing is, though, it would scare the shit out of me anytime I would think about the prospect of Ian Watkins walking free. After serving 2/3 of his 29-year jail sentence, he would have been eligible for parole in 2033. That is only 7.5 years from the time he was murdered. And even though I don't celebrate his death, I still can't help but feel relieved that he's gone. If you can separate the man from the art, I've made a playlist of Lostprophets songs. They're a band that have plenty of mediocre tracks, and the quality of their work definitely took a dip after their second release, but there is enough material over their 5 records to make one absolutely superb nu metal album, which is what I have compiled. I was really excited when I found out that the remaining members of Lostprophets went on to form a new band, No Devotion, with singer Jeff Rickley, and when I went to look them up, I found out that their music is fucking abysmal. No, I mean seriously, I was trying to find some semblance of a good song there, but it is all arty, pretentious dog wank. Considering how well Lostprophets did with the Warped Tour gig that Watkins missed, I did wonder why they didn't just continue on and make Jamie Oliver their new frontman.
Wow, is that your real name?
Yeah.
But the thing is, when the news broke about Ian Watkins, anything associated with Lostprophets became a poison chalice. When Watkins' crimes came to light, the other band members started receiving death threats. They claimed that they had no idea what was going on, which for the most part I do believe. Ian Watkins had very purposefully kept himself separate from the band, going so far as moving back to Wales while the other members lived in LA as a way to try and keep his deplorable private life from his friends. Saying that though, Watkins left a ton of evidence all over the place, one former girlfriend having reported what he was doing along with proof back in 2008, which the authorities seemed to do absolutely nothing about. It is hard to believe that none of the other 5 members had even an inkling that something sketchy was going on. Okay, maybe not the baby rape, but from what I've read, Watkins seemed to have a fondness for younger teenage groupies. Maybe they really didn't see anything weird, or maybe they just couldn't let it all in. And you know what? It's not my place to judge. We will never truly understand what happened to Ian Watkins, but at the same time, it's something I desperately need an answer to. I found a really interesting quote by guitarist Lee Gaze where he said, "I think he was just attracted to what was bad and being in control." But even if this were true, then why? I mean, how can a person go from being a straight-edge punk rocker to working as a male escort to support a meth habit, posting pictures of himself on a hardcore fetish website, stuffing increasingly large items up his butt, dressing up a 16-year-old in a school uniform, penetrating every hole, and then pissing on them? And that's even before all the child rape, of which there seems to have been quite a bit more than what he got charged with. How the fuck does a person like this exist? And it is so fucking maddening for me that I will never have an answer to this. I know this video started with an off-color witticism about an extremely dark topic, but you know what? Joking about it is one of the few things that makes my own childhood trauma seem less horrific. Oh, and also, I just want to mention, that provocative-looking picture of Misty, that's not fan-made. That is official artwork for one of the Pokemon spin-offs. I just want to remind you all that Misty is supposed to be 10 years old. I mean, come on, Japan. Seriously. Japan. Come on. I had really not meant this to be my end of year video. There are so many topics I want to make videos on, but I've just not had the time since I went back to college. I was finding it difficult to come to terms with the fact that I'm pursuing a career, while it is something that is lucrative and that will hopefully put some good back in the world, is ultimately something I don't really care about. The first time around in college studying music theory and composition, that was part of the dream. That was something that I worked at with passion. My current situation is just something to be doing, and I had a bit of a meltdown 3 weeks into my first semester. After seeing the college counsellor, it was apparent that to stay mentally well, I needed to be doing something that would feed my soul. And that thing was writing. Not to get rich or famous, writing just for the sake of writing. Also, I decided to start a second channel where I make AMVs because, fuck it, why not? I'll have that linked in the description if you're curious. Reflecting on the dumpster fire that has been my 30s, on the surface, it may seem like it was all for nothing. But you know what? Progress is not always obvious. It might not be a thing you've produced, or a career, or a fantastic new body. The fact that 7 years ago I went from fantasizing about drinking drain cleaner on a daily basis to now having that same thought maybe once every 3 weeks, that's progress. That's big fucking progress. So take it easy on yourself. Don't get swept up with all those self-help gurus that have their lives sorted out. 2026 is not going to be my year, and that is absolutely fucking fine. I'm not locking in. I'm not going to be making my dreams a reality. I'm going to let my mind wander and play. I'm going to try to be kinder to myself and others. This year, I'm going to try to find some comfort in an existence that is extremely uncomfortable. And if you take just one piece of advice away from this video, please remember.
Do not diddle kids, it's no good diddling kids.